So this was a question that I got from Greg Sarah last week, and it also got me thinking back to a particular play from the recent Netherlands Belgium, or to be more precise, Belgium Netherlands Pro League match, the one off that was the last match before the Pro League shut down. And something had been bothering me about it for quite some time, like since at the moment I saw the play to now. And I needed to work through it. And I thought you guys might be interested in hearing about this because I want to talk about drag flicks that are above the knee in very specific scenarios. Now, Greg's question, by the time I work through everything, it's going to be pretty obvious where we get to with that, and no worries. But what he wanted to understand a bit more thoroughly is that understanding that a drag flick that hits an on-rushing defender who is 5 meters or closer to the ball, if it hits their knee or above, that will be deemed dangerous. And he went on to ask what happens if the initial one deflects off the defender above the knee within 5 meters of the attacker and it goes to the goal. So we'll get to that answer, and please go ahead, give the answer in the chat. I'm into that. But it had me thinking about this play that I'll show in a couple minutes. But let's just look over the rule first, because there's an interesting part of the language that I'd never really paid attention to. So this is Rule 13.3 sub M. And it's the last part of the guidance here. Yeah, let me do this. So if a defender is within 5 meters of the first shot at goal during the taking of a penalty corner and is struck by the ball below the knee, another penalty corner is awarded, or if struck on or above the knee in normal stance, the shot is judged to be dangerous. So the key word that I focused on there, the key couple words, was struck on the knee or above. That the player must be struck. Now, in a big sense, this seems logical because you're like, well, if they don't get struck, then the ball is proceeding towards the goal and everything's cool, right? Here was the play I want to talk about. Belgium, Netherlands.
It is Hendricks, the number one running from Peters. Hendricks on the reverse stick shot coming in, good save. What a follow-up that is!
They're calling this for the height on the first run. Seemed to hit Peters' hands on his stick. Not sure what the referral's
Yes,
for.
Lorraine.
Can you check the height of the ball on the first shot, the first slip?
I will check the first shot on goal.
Keeper makes the save down low to his left.
No, I think they're talking about this first shot.
Oh, that one there, okay.
So that's hit Peters on the hand. If his hand is above his knee, because we talk about danger of it hitting a player's body, if it hits them above the knee within 5 meters, it's considered to be dangerous. If it hits his stick, or his hand on the stick, but still above his knee, is that a foul? No, because the first shot's on goal and it can be anywhere. So there is no danger because it's hit his hand.
The hand is part of the stick.
Hand's part of the stick, so it's not dangerous because it can't be because it's not hit his body.
So just here on the replay, just to make it absolutely clear what happens, as clear as I can with the footage that I've got. Peter's bottom hand in a black glove is right in front of his knee pad, and he does take the ball off the glove. If he hadn't, and it had hit anywhere else on his body, or if it had hit the stick cleanly, the ball would have deflected with much more velocity in some kind of direction. Now the stick's getting rounded at that point, so maybe it would have gone off to the side. Hard to tell, but the ball just kind of flopped down right into Van Doren's pathway, and then he reverse stick the ball. Now I don't want to get into that reverse shot because yeah, it was probably backstick. So there's not really a lot to talk about with that. But I want to talk about that initial drag flick because when I was listening to Simon describe the scenario, at first I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. How is it that a ball can hit the body of a defender at the knee height or above and be dangerous, but if it hits the stick at the knee height or above, it's not dangerous? So the defender does the right thing, exercises skill, closes properly by some incredible stroke of magnificent ability or maybe sheer dumb luck. It hits the stick. They, in essence, get penalized because play continues because it's not dangerous. And I thought, that's bullshit. That doesn't seem good at all. Because we're worried about suicide running. We're worried about defenders putting their bodies in the way. We don't want to encourage that, but that sure seems like a bit of an encouragement. So what I wanted to do was break down the logic behind that. And the first place I looked to was, well, can a shot that would hit a defender at that point of their body, the knee height or above, could that ball actually go into the net? Because to me, we look at intentionally raised hits, for example, on goal, and we ask ourselves, is that shot on goal? If it's not, it's dangerous because it at least has to be on goal. That's the first criterion for danger. Okay, I know there's more, but that's the first object that we look at. So I thought, well, if somebody is shooting, if somebody is taking a drag flick and it's going to sky over the top of the goal, just because it hits the defender's stick and plays on, like that doesn't seem like that's really a fair way to continue play, does it? Because it's rewarding a player for doing something that, rewarding the attacker for not doing it. So, hi, Greg, you're here. Good, because we're talking about you and your question. So I did a completely ridiculous thing, but this was important to me because I wanted to understand, because my suspicion had always been one of the reasons that we don't want drag flicks to hit defenders who have closed properly at that precise height or above is that, like, you're not going to score it. I'm wrong. Lee Barron will be very excited to hear that. Look at me admitting yet again that I'm wrong. So this is what I did. First step is I looked at the average speed of a high performance drag flick. Now, this is not my drag flick. I don't have one. It's not maybe your drag flick, but this is Wikipedia listed this, and I take them at their word that 80 miles per hour, I take the collective at their word that 80 miles per hour, which is around 130 kilometers an hour, is a standard high performance drag flick speed. Now, yes, Sardar Singh was timed at 148 kilometers an hour. And yes, I know Hendricks is not an average drag flicker by any means. He's probably right up their numbers, but let's just take this because it's nice and round and it'll be fun. And what I did is I looked at the trajectories of various, a couple of different degrees, and I'll show you where I got these degrees in a minute when I get my glasses on. And what I wanted to first establish was, well, does the ball change trajectory at that speed? So I went on the internet and I found a really cool calculator that showed me that the ball doesn't start dipping in its trajectory until it's traveled at least 13.27 meters, and then it starts tailing off a little bit. So that was important. And whether the angle of the launch is 5.7 degrees, which I'll explain in a second, or it's 6.3 degrees, it's even further, the higher the degree. I don't know, physics, somebody can explain this to me. 14.75. So yes, we know that the full distance of the circle is 16.63 meters. And I'm taking that as being from right inside the circle and over the line. because actually it's 16.63 from the front of the goal line to the second edge of the circle. But now I'm shifting that 50 millimeters. Is it 50 millimeters? Yeah, 50 millimeters. That's how wide the circle line is. Look, I looked everything up. It was crazy. Anyway, trust me, 14.63, or don't trust me, go look it up yourself. But any drag flick is going to be, Lee, this is not elementary physics. This is like advanced physics for me because I did never take physics in high school. I did chem and bio. So yes, ball trajectory straight up. We're going to assume that. But also a drag flick isn't released. The point of launch of that drag flick isn't right inside at the 14.63 meter distance away. If you watch any of the drag flickers, you can watch the video again here with Hendricks, and you can see that he has stepped.
Hendricks on the reverse stick shot coming in, good save. What?
He has stepped at least a meter into the circle. Here, let me mute this because it's loud, and I'll get another vantage point, maybe. Okay, so he picks up the ball there, but he steps, and by the time he releases it, he is probably 2 meters, because the drag flickers, again, I looked this up, and I looked at a whole bunch of papers that were written about drag flickers and looked at pictures, and the point of release is actually about a meter ahead of their midpoint of their body stance. So it's ahead of their left foot and probably a meter. So I think they're releasing the ball at 2 meters. So the distance that the ball has to travel is like 12.63 meters to the goal. Yeah, this is fun, right? You're going, why am I into this? I don't know. Then what I did is I did some basic trigonometry, which was very hard for me. And I calculated what the angle of the ball flight is when it strikes a player at shin guard height. So right at the top of the shin guards. Now I had to make some assumptions. I said that the defender was 5 meters away, not any closer, but 5 meters away, because that's the maximum distance away at which we are going to consider the height at which it hits that player. The next assumption I made was that the player's shin guard would be 50 centimeters high. Now, I measured mine, so from the ground, not just my tibia, but from the ground up, I was 40 centimeters. Now, I'm short as F, so I'm clearly not the average. And then I looked at the average tibia length in a human is 43.8 centimeters. So I went, yep, we're going to say 50 centimeters because it's nice and round. And it works with all the other fives we're dealing with. So the angle that ball is going to be traveling at to be safe is 5.7 degrees. I hope you're with me, because I have no idea if I'm talking sense. Then, now if we go above that, I took into account the diameter of the ball and how high it would have to be to likely just strike the knee cleanly and not hit the shin guard, would be another, did I say 5 or 10 centimeters? I can't remember. The calculation might be there. But to be higher, the degree would have to be 6.3 degrees. This is the last math. My very sophisticated, this very sophisticated sketch. Sorry, Adam, that is hilarious. Sorry. That given the height of the goal minus the diameter of the ball that I assumed you would have to allow for in order to fully fit the ball underneath the goalpost. If the ball is launched at 6.3, which would be a dangerous height, hitting the defender at 5 meters away, it would get into the goal at 139.5 centimeters high. So it means that when you're hitting a defender, that ball is easily going to go on goal. So what does that mean? I don't know. it means that there's not a lot of logic to that from a goal scoring perspective. It's purely an equipment perspective that a player wearing shin guards, they're safe because of their shin guards, not because, that ball's going in the goal and it's expected that they should only have to protect themselves from balls that would go in the goal. And one of the questions that I had just sort of boiling in my mind, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this as well, is now that everybody at the higher levels are wearing knee protectors, does that change why that rule is there? Why we say knee height or above? Are we just going to say that anything that strikes an unprotected area of the body is going to be deemed dangerous? Should that change? I don't know. I, for one, hate more protective gear because I believe that the statistics from other sports are very clear that the more protective gear that is worn, the less players take personal responsibility for their opponent's safety. It's a documented fact, science. It's going to be on IFL Science on Facebook very soon, I'm sure. Simon's asking if the defender is 2.5 meters or 1.7 meters tall. Doesn't matter how tall they are, really, except for how high their shin guards are. There you go. This is a really popular topic, I can tell. Now, let me see where I am in my notes because it might help me get back on track. So, think about it from a couple perspectives. That, first of all, it does actually encourage the attacker to want to shoot around the defender, because if they hit the defender at a height that would normally score, well, then they can have that called as dangerous against them. So they do actually want to avoid the defender. And I think it was Terry Walsh that was talking about this, how it's important to take into account that shooters should be avoiding, like, just because they can wind up from that point in the castle doesn't mean that they should. And that shooting around defenders has to be part of the overall philosophy on penalty corners. But it also does encourage defenders to put their bodies on the line. And this is not what we want. We don't want defenders getting hurt, and we don't want them getting hurt just so they can take advantage of a rule. I was on a South Central SCHUA Umpire's evening chat on Monday, and it centered around a coach giving sort of their input on what they thought were things that they wanted to sort of interact with umpires about. And one comment that they make was very interesting to me, that they said that they coach their players on aerials on the launch to get hit with the ball, because if they don't get hit, it doesn't get called as dangerous. And I hate that thought. I absolutely hate that thought. And I hope you would all feel the same way as well, that defenders putting themselves on the line is not, and needing to get hit with the ball in order for us to make the right decision that a ball is dangerous shouldn't be the way. We also, and obviously that means that in that coach's experience, they're seeing a lot of incorrectly aerial ball launches being called as safe and not dangerous the way that they should be. So that's also a bad sign in that sense as well. At the same time, in circle, the idea is to score, and defenders should not be encouraged to block up the scoring opportunities just by putting their body in the way, because that isn't skill. That isn't hockey. So I guess for me, I'm trying to puzzle through this conundrum, understanding that, yep, it's it's a discrepancy, it's a paradox that that a ball that hits a stick at knee height or above is safe simply because it doesn't hit the defender. This is the first time I've seen this in all of the time. Usually when it hits the stick, it's low enough. And having such a clear example is so extremely rare. So before I go on to Greg's question, I'm going to start going through some comments to see what you have to say about this. Oh, yes. Jamie, my friend, I was thinking about that yesterday. Like, oh, I really should do this for indoor as well, because that's always been that's an assumption that I've held very strongly in indoor as well. 3 meters, distance to the goal, the whole thing. So yes, Jamie, I am going to go through it. Let's see. Well, no, we'll get to Greg's question in a second. Line should be 75. Oh, okay, right, 75 millimeters. I was confusing that with the width of the goalposts. Thank you, Simon. That's a good correction. Oh, goodness. No, no, they wouldn't be, right? If the shin guard is shorter, and remember the old style of shin guards that we used to wear? I don't know how long you guys have been around, but when I was playing in in the 80s and the 90s, I remember the big trend was those half Z's shin guards. We thought they looked really dope. They were really cool. Okay, maybe I was a, teenager, 20 something, and I had no idea what protection was, and I was only interested in what was cool. But yeah, we wore these halvesy shin guards. I mean, if somebody rocks up in a set of those, what are you going to call? You're going to call the knee height, but the purpose of it, the only impetus behind the rule is that they should be protected. And there's no rule saying that shin guards have to come up to the knee. Isn't that bizarre? Sorry, Adam, for ruining your dissertation break. Ooh, thanks, Rachel. Let me know. Okay. Go back to that. Let's see. But yeah, and then in the era of the knee protectors, Simon, it's harder. And the knee protectors are supposed to be, until November of this year, until the FAH came out with that really exciting rule clarification, that knee protectors were supposed to be the same color as the socks. And you could see the high level teams like either having to like custom order, they were like taping them up with the right colors. And so they'd have a set for their away kit and a set for their home kit and all that kind of stuff. And the point was, and that makes it hard. If you're actually protecting your knees, you can't see whether it hits. So, Marvo, the definition of a shot on goal is an attempt to get it there. And you look in the definitions in the rules section right at the front. It'll define it. And yes, it doesn't have to be going in, but it has to be pretty close. And so, in order to do the calculations, I didn't even have to get to that because my calculations showed me that it was so clearly, a dangerous ball that strikes a defender would still be very clearly going into the net. I didn't even have to get to that deal with that assumption at all, but it's a good point to make. Thank you. You can't say it's because it's a rule of knee. Yeah, Lee, you get to do all the physics for me for the next one. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so if you're taller, you're actually at a disadvantage because more balls will be considered safe because you have more More tibia to strike. More shin guard to strike. Yeah, exactly. That is very important. Yeah, Snane, and that's the point that I'm trying to get to, is that I'm extrapolating from what we consider to be a shot on goal. And that this very narrow situation, because I'm trying to find the logic in it, the sense in it, and because it helps us if we understand why a rule is a certain way. It makes it a lot easier to make the right decision in the moment. Memorizing rules sucks. Understanding how hockey works rules. And I'm trying to get to that point with so many rules so that we can get a better idea of where the gray area is really, you know, trying to make it more obvious where the delineation points are, getting that consensus. And so if there was something logical about this other than the height of shin guard protection, then it would help, but it isn't. So it still sets up defenders for wanting to suicide run because they get a benefit. It should put more of an onus on attackers to go around, but they don't. And we know that. We know that they just rifle that shot as soon as it comes. Well, Simon, in front of your face is a lot higher. That angle going over goal. Yeah. And so at what height? Now we've got a secondary classification that it hits your stick, doesn't hit your body, but if it hits your stick in front of your midline area, in front of your stomach, in front of your chest, like where's the line? And we'd probably say, well, yeah, midline's too high. Thigh height, maybe over that knee protection is where we would draw our own danger interpretation. But again, you see the danger in trying to put what seems to be a nice, clear definition in the guidance, and it doesn't cover near enough. There's still tons of gray area and lots that we have to interpret. So, Anik, hi, love your name. Can you see Peter's reaction of the head turns away from the ball? Dang, of course. Like, wouldn't you? So that's where there is, we don't really take into account the legitimate evasive action so much. I mean, it was very brave running and very skillful running. Let's just go with skill. It was fantastic. But he gets penalized for it. He does this amazing thing and he pings it with his glove in front of his knee on his stick. And yeah, he flinches, but he stays true to it. And it ends up in a goal. That might have been a reverse stick or a back stick. So let's get back to Greg's question. Now that I've gone through all the philosophy and the vagueness and the logic and all that kind of thing. So if the drag flick deflects off the defender above the knee within 5 meters of the attacker and goes on the goal, it's still a free hit defense. Sorry, Greg. That's not obviously an advantage situation because the defense does not have advantage there. They are the ones who have been fouled against. So it's just got to be a quick free out. See, I made it easy in the end. I just had to go on a big, long, convoluted, crazy chat beforehand. How am I doing for time? 12:42. Okay. Clapping my hands, that means I'm starting a topic. Let me know. Whoops. I hit the wrong button. Let me know if you have any other comments, queries. If you'd like to send a referral to a therapist, I'm open. Okay? Clearly. It's been a long shutdown and it's just getting worse. I know you lot have been getting news about vaccines in the UK, if that's where you're at, and apparently we have vaccines that are going to be on the ground here in Canada within the next week. So, look, it's coming. The light is at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, this is the problem. Teo asking about this is basically the suicide run, right? And yeah, we just don't want this in the game. I think that we're getting closer and closer to that that tipping point with the corner. Now that the drag flicks are an average of 130 kilometers an hour, and we've done the best we can with equipment and things like that, I don't know how we keep it going. I just don't. Ian, if your stick's in front of your legs, wouldn't it be more likely to be seen as a suicide run rather than if the stick is whipped off to the top to stop a potential shot with the legs, body more to the side? Yeah, that's exactly right. It would be, except Peters in that instance is he's protecting his body in essence with a 50 centimeter wide stick. I think that's what the rule book told me. 50 centimeter wide stick, and protecting the width of his body like that. I mean, if he didn't have if he was waving his stick over to the side, he would have got cranked with the ball, and it would have been on his knee, and it would have been a dangerous ball, and it would have been a free hit to the defense. Most likely, unless you could argue that he's just putting his body in the way and therefore is a suicide run. But those are the hardest calls to make. I mean, have you ever had to make one? It's hard. Yeah, Jamie, go look in the rule book. Fact check me. I'm not here for the fake news. I'm here for facts and science. So I want to be called out if I get it wrong, but I'm pretty sure I looked at the stick diagrams G and H, I think they are, in the field and pitch and equipment specifications. Nut bars. So that's too big? Okay, go check it out. Oh, millimeters, thank you. Okay. Oops, thank you. If that's the only mistake I made throughout that entire thing, that's a freaking miracle, my friends.